Welcome to Sparks 1524 Travelogue. I'm still Nathaniel Miller, and once again coming to you from a secret location in a bunker near the center of the Earth, located in Niceville, Florida. The World War II generation is swiftly passing away from us. We're nearly 70 years from the end of that conflict, and most of the veterans have passed away or are passing away. But there's still places people can go to see, touch, and connect with World War II. These are the museum ships. Even more than museums on land, museum ships let people physically touch and walk in the places where our sailors fought, and many of them died during that conflict. Most ships that survived World War II went on to serve for many years and therefore underwent many modifications. This is most evident on aircraft carriers, many of which today bear almost no resemblance to the configuration they had during the war because of the subsequent advances in technology. However, there are two ships you can visit that are almost frozen in time to 1945. The first is the battleship USS Texas. Now, Texas is so old that this battleship served in World War I and World War II and is the only U.S. warship still afloat to have served in both conflicts. The Texas is currently home ported in Houston, but sadly she is closed to visitors while she undergoes major maintenance in preparation to a move to a new home port. The other ship you can get aboard that is straight out of 1945 is the destroyer USS Kidd. Named for Rear Admiral Isaac Kidd, who died on board the battleship Arizona during the attack on Pearl Harbor, the Kidd is a Fletcher-class destroyer. It was commissioned in 1943 and finally went out of service in 1964. However, unlike the other two Fletcher-class destroyers on display, the Cassin Young and the USS The Sullivans, the Kidd retained her World War II appearance. She was never heavily modified with post-war technology, making her a virtual time capsule. After her commissioning, the Kidd's crew adopted the pirate captain, Captain Kidd, as her mascot and commissioned a large garish portrait of Captain Kidd on the ship's smokestack. That portrait has been restored, and you can see it today. This was the portrait of a swashbuckling pirate the destroyer sailed into battle with. Kidd spent her entire World War II career in the Pacific, and overall she was a very lucky ship, suffering only one kamikaze strike that did sadly kill 38 sailors and injured over 50 others. Pieces of that plane, in fact, can be seen in the Kidd's adjoining museum building. One thing you have to realize about the Kidd is that, being period accurate to 1945, this ship has zero air conditioning. The Navy I served in, the aircraft carriers and amphibious assault ships I served on during my career, were all built in the 1960s and 70s, and air conditioning was pretty common. During World War II, air conditioning just didn't exist outside of some very specific spaces that had very sensitive equipment, such as a newfangled thing called radar. Boarding the Kidd during the sweltering Louisiana summer will give you a very profound experience of what it was like to be aboard the ship in the Western and Southern Pacific during World War II. You'll understand very quickly why a lot of sailors at night abandoned their bunks and slept on deck outside just to catch the hint of a breeze. You also have to remember that the Kidd is a destroyer, and if you've only ever toured World War II battleships and carriers, you know that ships can be cramped and close quarters. But a destroyer was even smaller. The average World War II sailor was 5 feet 9 inches in height. I'm 6 feet 4 inches. On a modern day ship, I still have to duck. Now when you visit the Kidd, you might find her serenely afloat in the Mississippi River, or you might find her dry docked. The Mississippi River can fluctuate up to 45 feet in depth, so the Kidd has a unique mooring system that will let her float when the water level is high, but let her gently settle onto some keel blocks that are permanently underneath her hull to be supported at times when the water level is low. One item to look for aboard the Kidd was more valuable to World War II sailors than gold or silver. This item was so valuable that the Kidd could use its products to trade for anything their sailors wanted. It's an item that in even today's Navy I served in is still highly prized. The Kidd is one of the few small ships in World War II to have an ice cream machine. Usually ice cream machines were found on the battleships and the carriers and the hospital ships, what we call the large decks. Most small boys, or small decks, whichever term you prefer, didn't have one. The Kidd was lucky enough to have an ice cream machine. It is on the tour. You will find it pretty easily, but it's a very interesting piece of equipment for a small ship like her to have. Once you're done on board the Kidd, take some time in the museum building. They have a great exhibit on World War I. They have an extensive collection of very high-quality ship models, some of which are themselves historically significant. And they have a beautiful small room dedicated to the history of the Kidd. So you can tour the ship, you'll learn a great deal from the walking tour on board, and then you can come back and kind of tie it all together in this room that is dedicated to the ship's history. This room also includes such items as the first Union Jack flown on board the ship, the first American ensign or American flag flown while the ship went into combat, as I already said, pieces of the kamikaze aircraft that hit the ship. There's a beautiful panel dedicated to Admiral Kidd himself, and a small memorial with photos of every one of the sailors who was killed on that unfortunate day in April 1945 when one kamikaze got through the screen and impacted the ship. Even as a child, long before I joined the Navy, I loved touring museum ships. They were big, they were cool, they were full of amazing stories of men and, as time went on, women who did heroic things for our country and for each other. I also loved them because this was a place where I could touch the history itself. Most museums, the artifacts are protected behind glass. The museum ship herself is the artifact. You can touch the same metal, the same deck, the same bulkhead that these heroes who fought this conflict for us touched and lived in. If you're interested in reading more about my adventures on the Kidd, please check out my column on this. The link is in the description below. As always, I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Feel free to share it. And until we meet again, remember to go and do great things.